visual attractions so astounding that they'll capture the imagination of the entire planet.
The most phenomenal discovery of our time.
How'd you do this?
Becomes the greatest adventure of all time.
Can I touch it?
Sure.
Universal Pictures presents.
You feel that?
Hold on to your butts.
A Steven Spielberg film.
Fences are failing all over the park.
Yeah, that's nice. Gotta go.
An adventure.
Look out! Down!
I can't get Jurassic Park back online.
65 million years in the making.
And a hearty welcome to one and all. We're back in the studio for episode 212 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. Once again, we're going to skip past all the promotional BS and get right to the meat of the episode. 31 years ago today, on June 11th, 1993, Jurassic Park opened in theaters. Now, I read Michael Crichton's book before it came out, meaning before the movie came out. My dad had read it when it first hit softcover. He absolutely loved it. He had a couple of problems with it. There were a few loose ends or plot holes that he couldn't understand why Crichton didn't at least explain. There were a couple of things. He said, I don't get it. And so much of the novel is incredible. And then there's just a couple of things where you say to yourself, well, how did this happen? How did that happen? So I was excited, as were many, not just Gen Xers or elder millennials or boomers, but movie fans, whether or not they had read the book. We were teased that Spielberg's film was going to be able to recreate dinosaurs in a way that we had not seen. That, well, how could we? We only had what we imagined, and the old school stop motion animation and claymation of early films such as King Kong and Godzilla, so to give you an idea. But we were told, and the advance reporting, very little in the way of internet, just regular news reports on TV, Premiere Magazine, Entertainment Weekly, people interviewing Spielberg or others involved in the production. But the gist that I got was that they were going to use a blend of practical effects and computer effects. So the old school type of effects person, such as a Phil Tippett or Stan Winston, they still had a role. Because if it was all going to be done in a computer, Phil Tippett and Stan Winston would be on the sidelines. That's not their angle. They are creature makeup effects, animatronic people. That was those areas were their areas of expertise. But we were told it was going to be something we'd never seen, an adventure 65 million years in the making. And the early trailers showed kind of the money shots. They just wanted to get people into theaters. There were shots of a Brachiosaurus, if I'm not mistaken, snacking on leaves from a tree. So when I read the book, I loved it, thought it was an incredible book. And Michael Crichton, who obviously was a brilliant guy, the mind of a scientist, he was a doctor. The science that he puts forth in the book is not, I mean, it's science, but they couldn't do that because they would have done it already. The way that they cloned the dinosaurs. But there's a logic to it. And many people who read the book assumed, oh, this can be done because it is explained so persuasively and feels so logical. People assumed, okay, so this can be done. Well, it might be that it can be done, but this doesn't work. This is not a real thing that he proposed here. But it was his science and kind of academic background that allowed him to come up with the idea in the first place. The book and the movie are close. There are a couple of action sequences in the book which Spielberg wanted to film. There was one in particular where I think Alan Grant, that's the paleontologist, played really well by Sam Neill in the film, where he's trying to escape with the kids down a river. And I'm not sure if they're attacked by Dilophosaurs or raptors, but it was a big action sequence in the book. And Spielberg, he knew what he wanted to do, but the cost of figuring it out, he said, would have been prohibitive. And he wasn't going to do a thing where they were going to be attacked by CGI dinosaurs. It's not going to work. One of the reasons why the film did work is the attacks, the actual attacks, were not done by computers. They were done by animatronics. But before we get to that, reading the book, there were a couple of loose ends. One of which was the character played by Samuel Jackson in the movie. I guess he's an engineer. He's one of the computer guys. He escapes from a situation. In a movie, he dies. The plot hole that my dad saw was that that character somehow made it back to base when he was in the middle of what would have been a zone with a lot of dinosaurs, and Crichton never explained how he got back to base. He just returned. So in the movie, the way that they solved that seeming plot hole was to just, I think the guy's last name was Arnold. They killed him. They bumped him off. You know, an ignominious exit for Samuel L. Jackson, similar to, spoiler alert, Deep Blue Sea, the shark movie, kind of Jaws 20-some years later, but genetically engineered shark movie, where Samuel L. Jackson gives this unbelievably impassioned, fiery speech about sticking together and let's kill some motherfucking sharks. And he gets eaten by a shark. OMG, spoiler alert, sorry. But I was really excited for the movie, especially because I had read the book and I was prepared, and I had no doubt that Steven Spielberg was going to make a terrific movie, even though, oddly enough, Spielberg's career had dipped a little bit. His previous film was Hook, not good, not a good movie, a total botch, all for me, a complete botch, where it was doomed at the story level. They picked a script which was just not interesting. I did not find that film to be, I mean, it was somewhat entertaining and beautifully shot and edited and the music and all of that, but it just didn't work. Within 10 minutes, I knew I wasn't going to like the movie. I saw it in theaters. I was a senior in high school. But he had done Hook, and he had also done the film Always, that's a better movie than Hook, but it wasn't good enough for someone of Spielberg's talent. And it was miraculous he got Audrey Hepburn out of however many years worth of retirement to work on that film. I wish her last project could have been something great. So Spielberg his career was not, Scorsese was getting the best projects first, would be a way that I would describe it, after Goodfellas. And it kind of Always didn't do that great. And Hook, I mean, the word is that Scorsese was actually offered Schindler's List first, if you can believe that. So Spielberg, still incredibly successful in his mid-40s, but nobody knew that in 1993 he was going to have Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, and that they would both go through the ceiling either financially or critical reception, or, okay, we need to take Spielberg seriously as an artist now. He's not just making fun movies. Well, he didn't always just make fun movies. That was always a crock. Go back to 87 with Empire of the Sun. That is not a fun movie. That was his first foray into World War II and the horrors of war, just not from the same angle. But I remember when the movie opened, there was some controversy. McDonald's got involved in what was going to be a Happy Meal promotion, but the film was rated PG-13, and there was a lot of chatter, obvious stuff. This is not a movie for kids. The fuck? They got people getting eaten alive. It's not a movie for kids. Well, parents brought their kids anyway. And I remember seeing it in theaters, and I thought the movie was terrific. It was really good. It was a very strong representation of the book. Of course, they had to leave out huge chunks of it. Grant and the kids are in the park for a much higher percentage of the book than they are in the movie. But the setup is nearly identical. Oh, and they kill off one extra character. Spoiler alert, the character of Gennaro, the attorney, he's still alive at the end. He survives the book. John Hammond dies in the book. They decided they wanted to soften that character. When they got a guy like Richard Attenborough, they didn't want to make him a complete heel. The John Hammond of the book, he's not really the villain, but he is a villainous, antagonistic character who, even at the end, does not believe he made a mistake. He thinks, we'll do it again next time. And this character has some of that, but because of Attenborough's kind of warmth as a performer, I mean, next year he played Santa Claus in Miracle on 34th Street. He's an actor we want to like, and Spielberg made that choice. We're not going to make Hammond as antagonistic a figure as he was in the book. These are the things that you do. This is the art of adaptation. A different filmmaker, Martin Scorsese, in the alternate universe where Martin Scorsese got commissioned with Jurassic Park, I guarantee you he would have kept Hammond. He probably would have made him even worse. You know, he would have had him back in heat, blowing people away. No, he wouldn't have done that. But I don't think that he would have softened the character. And I feel like Scorsese would not have opted for the sort of visual joke of Gennaro. I love the actor Martin Ferrero. Fucking guy was great. The fact that the guy gets killed while he's in the bathroom, while he's hiding. He's not literally in the bathroom. You know, when you got to go, you got to go. The masterstroke was Jeff Goldblum. That was the masterstroke of casting because Laura Dern was still on the rise. She had been Oscar nominated for, she plays Ellie Sattler. I'm sorry, Alan Grant, Sam Neill's character. They're both paleontologists and they're eventually going to get married. That's what we're led to believe in the world of this story. Laura Dern was on a high because at the time she was cast, she had just been nominated for a 1991 film called Rambling Rose. And that was the year Jodie Foster won for Silence, and Silence just swept everything. But there were people, and there are people to this day, who will say that what Laura does in Rambling Rose is every bit as compelling. Totally different movie, kind of a comedy drama, old school homespun story, but it doesn't go the way that you think because Laura's character of Rose, she thinks like a modern woman, even though will now probably be 100 years ago. But her character is not that important, and there's not that much for her to do. The character of Ellie was much more interesting in the book, and the character of Alan Grant was more interesting in the book. They didn't really give Sam Neill that much to work with. He has a couple of scenes that are really good where he scares a kid talking about raptors, and the way that he bonds with the grandkids, but it's not really an actor's role. He's kind of filling a place there. You know, I love Sam Neill. Thought he was even a movie that wasn't that good, Memoirs of an Invisible Man, which was the last movie he shot before Jurassic. He's fucking screaming that film. That movie couldn't figure out what it was wanted. Is it a comedy? Is it a mystery? Is it science fiction? Is it a straight up fantasy? Is it a story about manipulating the financial market? I don't know. Apparently, though, if you ever become invisible, go live in Switzerland on the ski slopes where you can be covered up all the time and no one will know you're actually invisible. That's a great life hack there. But Jeff Goldblum, I don't believe was the original choice to play Ian Malcolm, the chaos theory scientist. But whoever made the final decision, because I know Steven Spielberg wanted William Hurt. I don't remember if he wanted him either for Grant. That would have been a good idea. I think that William Hurt probably would have been a better choice. Even though Sam Neill's a more expressive actor, the William Hurt of that era, having just come off a stupendous performance, should have been Oscar nominated for The Doctor. William Hurt has a certain gravitas, and the role of Grant, it would have tested him. He didn't want to do it. I'm pretty sure I read that. He wasn't really interested. And the role of Malcolm probably would have been more to his liking, the kind of intellectual, and he played a similar kind of guy in the movie Altered States in 1980. He plays a probably 160 IQ genius named Eddie Jessup who does these crazy experiments. He would be like a chaos theory kind of guy. He does these crazy experiments in Altered States where he begins to regress and take on different forms. It is a very fucked up movie. And another film, it was one of the first motion pictures to use any level of CGI. Fascinating film. But William Hurt did not want to be involved. He did work with Spielberg years later in AI. He plays the professor who builds David, the robot. So Spielberg always wanted to work with William Hurt. That much is certain. But Jeff Goldblum as Malcolm was a fucking masterstroke. And he'd already played those kinds of cool intellectuals, although in The Fly, he was more kind of nerdy and geeky. In this movie, the nerdy elements are only because he's so brilliant. But he's a really cool guy. As he puts it, he's always looking for the next Mrs. Malcolm. And his line readings are all great. And he ad-libbed, must go faster. And then he got to say it again in Independence Day, must go faster, must go faster. I love the cast. of the movie. And I remember seeing the film for the first time. I thought the child actors, especially Joseph Mazzello as Tim, acquitted themselves very, very well. The scene where he's on the fence and the whole thing, and it looks like he's gotten fried. The effects work, though, is what brought people into the theaters. And even though we knew what to expect, Spielberg, as only he can, he gives you these moments of pure wonder. And there are very few filmmakers, and certainly not from the angle that he does it. Hitchcock did it, but usually in Hitchcock, it was a moment of suspense or something where we were not joining a character in wonder. But the kind of iconic shot of Laura Dern realizing what she's looking at, and I think it's a brontosaurus, and then we in the audience seeing the dinosaurs in motion, looking pretty fucking real, if you ask me. Just incredible. And so the kind of decisions that a director makes and a production team as a whole, because Spielberg is one of those very collaborative. Yes, he has the auteur tendencies and he has the kind of hallmarks, the imprimatur of Spielberg, where there are certain things that you expect from him in a movie. But he is somebody who is always listening to ideas and always wants everyone to speak up who should have a voice to speak up. So one of the things they needed to decide, which scenes are we going to shoot on location at the tropical island? It was somewhere near Costa Rica in real life, I think. But what were they going to shoot there? What were they going to shoot on sound stages? Which moments with dinosaurs were going to be solely in a computer and which were going to be animatronic dinosaurs? These things, I'm sure, kept Spielberg up at night because there's no real answer. It's all instinct and it's all going by gut, because he knew that Phil Tippett and Stan Winston, they were hitting home runs with the building of the creatures. When you think about Stan Winston, nobody did it better than him. It's like with makeup work, nobody did it better than Rick Baker. Stan Winston, his ability with animatronics, nobody did it better. Think of the Alien Queen in 1986. You tell me that does not look like a real creature. That is the best work of that type in the history of cinema. That's a hill I'll go down on. That Alien Queen looks like a living, breathing, slimy, murderous organism. It does not ever for 1 second look like anything but that. So the animatronics are used in a number of scenes. The dinosaur attack, the T-Rex attack, that's an animatronic. And so I want you to think about this, because many of you, if you're this far in this episode, you've seen this film multiple times. So if you remember when they're in the Jeep and there's all the product placement, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and promotional shit, they're going through the park. When it is daylight, they shot that on location. Once the sun goes down and things start to go wrong, that was shot on a soundstage. And this is where it gets tricky as far as matching, because you don't want continuity errors. You have to try as best as possible, because it was probably months later or months earlier. Because you think about it, you're in the middle of, you could be in Hawaii, you could be near Costa Rica shooting a scene, and you're only shooting what will be a complete 15-minute sequence. You're only shooting like 7 or 8 minutes of it. You don't just magically transport and finish the scene on a soundstage. This is mapped out well in advance. For all we know, they shot the stuff with the animatronic T-Rex attacking, and Jeff Goldblum essentially saving the kids by drawing the fire away from them onto him. And that's when Sam Neill famously yells, "Ian, freeze." But in those moments, excuse me, not in those moments, they could have shot all of the stuff on the soundstage from the T-Rex attack. They could have shot all of that months before shooting the stuff that was on location. And then the difficulty of actors and actresses trying to get back into character, trying to recapture the moment, the emotion. And yeah, they watch dailies, but it's not the same thing. It's like once you start going, you can't just switch off. Or I should say, you can. It's very difficult. And then to try to find that place again. But the blend of the practical effects, the animatronic dinosaurs, you know, in some cases, the raptors are CGI, and in other cases, they're animatronics. For example, though, another scene, a famous scene, where they show that if the dinosaurs aren't meat eaters, they have no problem with humans. They're not interested. You can fuck around with them. They're not going to eat you. They might sneeze on you. The scene where Lex gets to pet the dinosaur, and Grant, Sam Neill's really great in this scene where he points out they're not monsters. They're just animals. They could be dogs. They just happen to be dinosaurs. Those are animatronics. But the shots from behind, the kind of wide angles, that's CGI. These are all the kinds of things that everybody on the production team and Spielberg put through the mental meat grinder. And my guess is that there were certain shots that they intended to do one and ended up doing the other, because you don't exactly know how it's all going to turn out. And Spielberg was not 100% certain that the 1992-93 level computer was going to be advanced enough to give him what he needed. And there was a moment where Phil Tippett, I don't know about Winston, but Phil Tippett, when he saw some of the computer work, he couldn't believe what it looked like, how good it was. And he said something like, well, thanks for firing me, Steven, or something. And Spielberg's like, oh, no. I need you, because he thought they were going to be able to do it all in the computer, because he's not a filmmaker. He's a crafts guy, and he wasn't thinking like a filmmaker. No, we're going to do this for this. We're going to do this for that. And then we're going to have scenes and edits where we try to match it all together. And the scenes don't really show through for me. There's a shot of the Stegosaurus that's dead, and it looks like a Stegosaurus. That was another great animatronic, with the big pile of shit. That's a big pile of shit. I don't know if that was in the script or whether Jeff Goldblum ad-libbed that too. The movie does have great action sequences, and the kind of randomness of a dinosaur attack, they go to great pains to show that velociraptors are not just incredibly powerful, like proportionally speaking, they're incredibly powerful. They don't just show that. And they're super intelligent. But if a T-Rex gets a hold of a velociraptor, it's going to rip the velociraptor to shreds. And the randomness of the animal kingdom on display in the film, where the T-Rex, and it's the same T-Rex that we see in the Chris Pratt movies, it's the same one, because he has a scar in an area where he was injured. But the idea that the T-Rex, who was presented as an antagonistic force, it's a fucking T-Rex. He shouldn't be here. None of these dinosaurs should be here. If Hammond was going to build a Jurassic Park, he needed to figure out a way, and my guess is, because life finds a way, it was not going to work anyhow, to only resurrect plant-eating dinosaurs. If you have nothing but Brachiosaurus, you don't have much of a park, though. So they wanted to go for meat eaters. Tough shit. But the T-Rex, which is presented as a scary, frightening Godzilla, the 1998 version, the alien from Aliens, presented as that level threat. It's that level threat to anything in its path. And spoiler alert, the T-Rex taking down the raptor is amazing. The T-Rex essentially is the hero, spoiler alert. Because how can normal people with normal weapons, how do you fight a velociraptor as strong, as vicious, as intelligent, as powerful? The kid's pretty much got lucky. The velociraptor got so excited, thought he was going to get the kid, knocked himself out, and gave them a chance to escape. Didn't have that much time, but they had enough time. When I think, though, of the sequels, I mean, The Lost World Jurassic Park is another not a good movie. It was so well choreographed. Yeah, it was great to see Jeff Goldblum back as Ian Malcolm, but Vince Vaughn, who I really like, he was kind of wasted, and Julianne Moore had nothing to do. Peter Stormare was good. That's the guy from Fargo, and later incredible on Prison Break. He's just an awesome actor. But the movie as a whole, 2.5 stars out of 4. I saw that opening day. Letdown. Big letdown. Because the book apparently was terrific. They kind of didn't really do the book or come very close to the book. Maybe they just didn't think it was cinematic enough. Jurassic Park 3, it was just okay. Yeah, it was great to see the original cast. Sam Neill was back, and I think Laura Dern was back. It's not very good. And the 2015 Jurassic World, it was a huge hit. I like Chris Pratt. I like the idea of trying to train the dinosaurs. But The problem, Jurassic World was doomed for me from the conceptual stage. The fact that anybody, after the repeated disasters, would try again in the same fashion, don't. Within 5 minutes, I mentally checked out of the movie. I said, this is such effing BS. There's no way that what we're presented with, they would have gone ahead with the park. How many times do you have to make the same mistake? It's not a question of making money. As Jeff Goldblum said, yeah, they had issues at Disney World when it first opened, but if the Pirates of the Caribbean ride doesn't work, they don't eat the tourists. I didn't buy it. So the whole movie for me, no good. No good. Not even that the story was bad, because the action sequences were very tight, and I really liked Chris Pratt's performance in that film. But I just didn't, the concept just turned me off. I said, this is bullshit. There's no way they would do this. No? That's the way it goes, right? That's what makes a horse race. Not everybody. I would say 99% of people, if they didn't like the movie, it wasn't for that reason. But if you can't get me over the slightest of humps as far as believability, well, you lost me. And there aren't that many movies where I say that, where within the first 5 minutes, I'm mentally checking out, saying, this is bullshit. This is complete nonsense. No way they would do this. And they even had one character in Jurassic World who was wearing a shirt, again, product placement from the original Jurassic Park. And he said, he talks about how he liked the idea of the original park, that at least they were trying to do something different, that that it wasn't as corporate. Well, they wanted it to be as corporate, but everything went wrong too soon. They weren't even able to get any tourists there because things went wrong so quickly. Life finds a way. We are going to have dinosaurs on a dinosaur ride. The whole movie, Jeff Goldblum had me cracking up. Jurassic Park also, in addition to the thrills, as I said, it's one great scene after another. Spielberg just frames everything so beautifully. Outside of Star Wars and Superman, when I think of John Williams' greatest film scores, I think Home Alone. I actually put Home Alone certainly in his top 5 non-Star Wars, non-Superman film scores. Jurassic Park's up there. The main theme of Jurassic Park is it's majestic, it's amazing, and it doesn't have, for me, it doesn't echo any of his other work. Not that that's a problem. There are certain motifs that composers revisit. That's not a knock on them. That's just a reality. James Horner, the late, great James Horner, easily a top 5, in my opinion, best film composer in history. You listen to the scores of Braveheart and Titanic, the main theme, not Celine Dion. But you listen to those scores, they are very similar. Just as motifs in the Star Wars and Superman scores are very similar. John Williams' score for Home Alone, there are elements of it in Harry Potter. He didn't rip himself off, but there are certain motifs that he used, that he liked. I don't get any of that in his main theme with Jurassic Park. I don't know how he crafted such incredible music and such a, at the same time, heartwarming, but also a little bit uneasy. Da, 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 da. Like that is a soaring score. Like that's a score that is befitting of the dinosaurs roaming around, not killing anybody. Not quite to the level of, this I think his best score ever is Superman. If you were to say, I need you to construct and concoct a series of notes in sequence, a musical score to represent what it would be like to watch a man fly, that's John Williams' score for Superman. I don't know how the fuck he did it, but he did it. His score for Jurassic Park doesn't quite reach that level, but if we focus on the aspects of scientific advancement and the sense of wonder that characters feel, particularly in the first third of the film, it's up there with John Williams' finest work and really adds to the movie, that the musical cues, that everything is just so well done. I mean, what would we expect, right, from the best to ever do it? I love Horner. I love Jerry Goldsmith, Bernard Herrmann, who worked with Hitchcock. But John Williams, as far as having the greatest number of memorable scores, him. And anybody who maybe didn't even know that he did the music for Jurassic Park, he did. And it is just glorious. 31 years ago today, June 11th, 1993, Jurassic Park opened in theaters. Grossed more than $900 million. You don't want to forget that. It was the highest grossing film of all time up to that point. And, it's currently streaming free on Peacock. I think that's the only major streamer where you don't, like Prime, you have to pay a couple of bucks. So I just figured I'd throw that out there. Streaming on Peacock. And, yeah, if you get that channel, if you haven't seen the movie ever, or if you haven't seen it in a couple of decades, still works, still plays. But Jurassic Park, directed by Steven Spielberg and starring Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Richard Attenborough, Ariana Richards, Joseph Mazzello, Samuel L. Jackson, and Wayne Knight as Nedry, a critical character in the book who was also a key character in the movie. That was a character they made almost no adjustments to. His whole arc, his whole through line, exactly as it was in the book. He's one of the few characters where they were able to do that, and it works. Boy, was he well cast. Dodson! We got Dodson here! Dodson! Nobody cares. This has been episode 212 of the Confessions of a Not-So-Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Tuesday evening with me here in New York. If you caught this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 213 real soon.